Thank you. Good morning, everybody. This is the scheduled October 22nd meeting of the Tennessee Board of Examiners for Land Surveyors. I would like to, at this point, remind everybody that this is a recorded meeting on WebEx, so please keep yourself muted if you are not speaking, and because of bandwidth capabilities, we are no cameras. With that, I would like to turn it over to Chairman Kaufman for the call to order, and then we'll get a statement of necessity.
Very good. Thank you, Michael. As printed on the agenda at the top here, I'll read it verbatim here. Notice of the October 22nd, 2020 meeting of the Board of Examiners for Land Surveyors was posted to the Board of Examiners for Land Surveyors website on July 23rd of 2020. We'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. Would like to, probably for the record, do we need to do a roll call here of the board members present?
Yes, sir. We will do that.
Michael, this is Tim. I thought we corrected that date.
I'm sorry, I did not. We corrected it on the website, but I didn't send out a new copy. The meeting date was posted on July 26th. Excuse me.
How about September?
September?
Well, we're in an October meeting, and usually it's posted a week before.
Well, that's for the agenda. The meeting date, like
okay.
when it showed up on the website, was actually July 26th. So that's considered meeting notice there. But we actually had a big discussion about that yesterday, Tim. So thank you for bringing that up.
Thank you very much.
No problem.
Michael. So just for the record, that needs to be corrected to July 26th of 2020. Is that correct?
Yes, and that has been corrected on the website. I just forgot to send you all a corrected version of the hard copy yesterday.
Excellent, thank you. Michael, if you would, just for the record, do us a favor, and if you'd read through the board members' roll call with each of them responding.
Sure thing. Let's see here. All right, we'll start with Chairman, Mr. Kaufman.
Present.
Mr. Lingerfeld.
Present.
Mr. Dillahay.
Present.
And Mr. Martin.
Present.
Okay, all board members are present.
Excellent, thank you. Next up, the statement of necessity. I saw that on the last meeting, Ms. Bush had read that. Is that something we can do again for this meeting?
Yes, in fact, we will do a statement of necessity for every virtual meeting going forward. Maria?
Great, thank you. Good morning, everyone. This is a regularly scheduled meeting of the Tennessee Board of Examiners for Land Surveyors, which is taking place by electronic means utilizing the WebEx teleconference application on Thursday, October 22nd, 2020. Notice of this meeting was properly posted to the board's website. As there is not a physical quorum present, a statement of necessity is read into the record and filed with the Tennessee Secretary of State as required by statute. Pursuant to Tennessee Code Annotated 844-108B2, which states if a physical quorum is not present at the location of a meeting of a governing body, then in order for a quorum of members to participate by electronic or other means of communication, the governing body must make a determination that a necessity exists. That determination must include a recitation of the facts and circumstances on which it was based. Further, TCA 844-108A3 defines necessity as matters to be considered by the governing body at that meeting require timely action by the body, that physical presence by a quorum of the members is not practical within a period of time requiring action, and that participation by a quorum of the members by electronic or other means of communications is necessary. The purpose of this meeting with members attending by teleconference is to address regularly scheduled matters of the board in the most safe manner due to the COVID-19 pandemic. All voting will be conducted by roll call. Thank you.
Good job. Thanks, Maria. Next up, we've got the adoption of the agenda. If anyone would like to make a motion for the adoption.
I'll make a motion that we adopt the agenda with the chair having the flexibility if an item needs to be moved relative to some of staff or legal that needs to be someplace else, or we've had something come up that we've not heard about.
Great. Thank you. Motion by Tim. Anyone second?
Second. Jackie.
Jackie, thank you. All right, there's a motion and a second for adoption of the agenda. Any further discussion? All right, hearing none by voice vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody
Aye.
opposed?
I thought we had to roll call that, Jay.
Okay, we can do that by
Roll.
individual.
Sure, we'll call the roll. Mr. Kaufman,
Aye.
Mr. Dillahay,
Aye.
Mr. Lingerfeld,
Aye.
Mr. Martin.
Aye.
Great,
Thank you very much.
The agenda is adopted. All right, next up would be the review and approval of the minutes from July. I trust that the other members of the board, including myself, have had ample opportunity to review the minutes that were submitted. I think they were revised and resubmitted the other day. Thank you, Michael, for doing that. Any comments or approval or motions to be made on review of the minutes from the July meeting?
I make a motion that we approve as written.
There's a motion from Tim. Is there a second?
Second. Jackie.
Is that Jackie?
Yes.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. I'll call the roll. Mr. Kaufman,
Yes.
Mr. Dillahay,
Yes.
Mr. Lingerfeld,
Aye.
Mr. Martin.
Yes.
Okay. Gentlemen, if you would all pull up your legal report, we'll let Erica go ahead and present the legal report for this month's meeting.
Okay, thank you. Chairman, would you like me to summarize or would you like me to read verbatim?
I don't care for them to be read in verbatim only because some of them are quite lengthy. However, if any individual member of the board does want that, I'll certainly go along with it. I trust we've had ample opportunity to review these ourselves personally. If you just want to review them in general and then we can discuss each, I'd be fine with that.
Okay, that sounds great. I'll do the best to summarize then. Number one is 2020-031-401. Here we have a complainant who hired respondents to complete a boundary and a topographic survey. The complainant did this because they had hired an attorney looking to pursue a suit of access infringement, and they were advised that they needed to get these surveys done for. Sent me a copy of the original proposal and agreement, which was signed by both the complainant and the respondent, what the respondent would be doing. And that's all laid out in the summary. But what the complainant was a copy of it with a lot of handwritten changes to all of the proposal of the details, and I had no proof that the respondent ever agreed to those handwritten changes. It seemed to me more like what the complainant had an issue with. And the respondent also denied ever agreeing to the handwritten changes. And we had an expert review conducted. The expert found no violation of any statutes or rules, no incompetence, no misconduct, and no kind of conflicts. The expert also found that the respondent had fulfilled their obligations to the complainant in accordance with the original agreement that was signed by both parties. Therefore, my recommendation is to dismiss this complaint.
Great, thank you, Erica. Does any board member have discussion on this item? All right, hearing none. Just a quick review of my review of it. I agree, Erica, with your thoughts on that and also with your recommendation for a dismissal. It seems to me like it's more of a civil case, contractual type thing. It's certainly not within the purview of our board here. If there's no further discussion on this item, I'll entertain a motion.
Jackie, I move that we dismiss the complaint.
Jackie with the motion. Is there a second?
I'll second. This is Tim.
All right, Tim with a second. So a motion from Jackie, second from Tim. Any further discussion? All right, hearing none, we'll take a voice vote here individually. Michael, if you could run that for us.
Yes,
Okay.
I forgot I was on mute there. Mr. Kaufman,
Yes.
Mr. Dillahay,
Yes.
Mr. Lingerfeld,
Aye.
Mr. Martin.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. The recommendation from staff for dismissal passes. Next item, Miss Erica.
Okay, number 2, 2020-041431. Here, the complainant alleges that the respondent pulled up line markers and moved them during the survey, and the complainant did not provide any evidence to support these allegations. It's a statement they didn't know when the markers were allegedly removed. Respondent had performed the survey at issue for complainant back in July 2018 on land that joins the complainant's land, and it denies ever moving these line markers. They've been doing this a very long time. Assures us that the crew didn't move any markers, and it seems that this land has been surveyed at least 3 times, and the only thing that was allegedly moved was the markers the did not agree with. So an expert review was also conducted. The expert found no violation, and recommendation is to dismiss the complaint.
Great, thank you. Any comments from the board members here?
Yes, just a question for Miss Erica. Good morning, Miss Erica. This is Tim. In the summary, it says respondent discovered an overlap as a result of 2 independent surveys performed by separate companies. My question to you is, in the dialogue of this review, was it ever mentioned that the respondent pointed this out to the claimant or to his client?
You know, I hear that my audio is out, and I'm not sure I'm hearing. Would you mind if I tried to use my phone?
I didn't understand you. I'm sorry.
Erica, this is Michael. I believe you asked if you could try your cell phone. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah, that'd be great.
It
Yes.
would be, yeah. There is
Okay.
some audio issues there.
Take a moment. Okay, let's see.
Erica, why don't you go ahead and mute the mic on your device right now?
I'll get it muted.
All right, everybody, we'll just hang on for a minute and wait for Erica to connect with her cell phone. That should help with some of the audio issues that we've been having this morning.
Yeah, I was hearing quite a bit of static there. Intermittently, I could pick up on bits and pieces, but I hope this does improve.
Agreed, and it kind of worked for the recap situation, but once it gets to Q&A, that kind of it makes it a bit daunting there, doesn't it? I believe looks like Stuart has just joined us.
I did. I just got back to my desk, so.
Hey, Laura, while we wait, why don't we go ahead and pause the recording until Erica joins back up?
Can y'all hear me?
Yes, Erica, thank you. The recording has restarted, and just to be clear that Erica Smith has rejoined us by phone right now, and we'll continue with the Q&A.
I'm so sorry about that. Thank you for your patience.
Erica, did you were you able to hear Mr. Lingerfeld's question there?
I couldn't. I'm sorry. If you could repeat it.
Restating that question for her, please.
Certainly, that's not a problem. Sorry you're having technical difficulties, Miss Erica. I'm not very
Thank you.
technological myself, so I can feel the pain.
This is the first time it's happened.
Okay. My question was, in the summary, there is a sentence that says respondent discovered an overlap as a result of 2 independent surveys performed by separate companies. Prior to that, it stipulates that the respondent had performed the survey at issue in 2018. So that doesn't tell me whether the independent surveys, one of them is his or both of them are someone else's.
No, both of them they're 2 separate past surveys from 2 separate companies.
And one of them is not his.
Correct.
Okay. Well, the point here was, the reason for that question is, we have a statute, 6218-124, subparagraph D, that stipulates the licensee or the surveyor, if they discover something of this nature, is to notify the individual that it affects. And in this case, I was just simply questioning whether or not they did notify the complainant that that situation was there. That was what my question was.
I wouldn't be able, hold on, let me look at it one more time here. I don't think that I wouldn't know, because the person that was hired, I guess, the person who hired respondent to do the survey is not the complainant here. So are you saying that the surveyor should have notified everybody that could have been affected?
Basically, that's what the statute said. That's what the statute says.
Okay. I mean, the complainant hasn't brought that up as being a problem. So it wasn't something that I questioned.
Okay.
What the only thing the complainant is complaining about is that somebody moved the markers. They assume that it must have been the most recent surveyor.
Right. And based on the spirit of the complaint, I have no issue with your recommendation. I just wanted to clarify that point to determine whether or not anything of that regard had been mentioned in the documents that you saw.
Thank you. Yes, I understand that, but yeah, it wasn't. So the expert didn't bring up that as a violation either. So I would like to make that known.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you very much.
Tim, you brought up a good point. I thought the same thing as I was reading through, and I saw those key words about the overlap. But I think that might be a little bit beyond the scope of what we're focusing in on with this complaint here. Any other comments or questions for Ms. Erica on this particular complaint? If none, I'll certainly entertain a motion.
I make a motion that we dismiss per legal's recommendation.
All right, Tim, with a motion for the recommendation of staff to dismiss, is there a second?
A second.
Jackie?
Yes.
All right, got a motion and a second. If there's any further discussion, hearing none, Michael, would you call the roll, please?
Yes, sir. Mr. Kaufman.
Yes.
Mr. Dillahay.
Yes.
Mr. Lingerfeld.
Aye.
Mr. Martin.
Yes.
Thank you.
Very good. With that, the recommendation to dismiss passes. Ms. Erica, can we move on to item number 3, please?
Yes.
Thank you. Number 3 is 2020058 And this complaint was opened against a licensee as a result of a different complaint against a firm that this licensee was supposedly acting as the responsible charge land surveyor for some time, while also running his own firm, their own firm. So the commission had asked that we open this complaint and investigate further into this licensee at the last meeting. We did penalize the firm for a $1,000 civil penalty, and that has been paid by the firm, and that matter's closed. They signed the consent order agreeing to that violation. So an investigation into the actual licensee showed full cooperation by the respondent, and the respondent admitted everything that I've already presented in the last complaint, that they did mistakenly and in violation work for another company acting as the responsible charge while running their own company. So I kind of wanted to open this up for discussion as to whether we want to issue a second civil penalty to the actual licensee who committed this violation, knowing that we've already penalized the firm. So I'd like to just kind of open it up for any questions or discussions or thoughts on that.
Great, thanks, Ms. Erica. Yeah, it brings up an interesting point here. I'll tell you, I do feel better in seeing that, or at least understanding that the parties involved here have been open, responsive, compliant, especially that the firm has already resolved the consent order and the civil penalty. Obviously, that it doesn't appear there's any underhanded, nobody's trying to hide anything. It's all in the up and up. It looks to me like they're agreeing to what the board has presented here. And so it does bring up an interesting point here that okay, so we've resolved the issue with the firm itself. That kind of water under the bridge is done and gone. But now do we address the individual, the registrant himself? Just real quick, my point of view here on this is that those rules are set out for the registrants themselves. While the corporations and companies have to comply with them in addition, they're specifically set out to regulate the registrants. And in my understanding, myself, just like every other registered surveyor in the state, has to, number one, understand, but number two, be in agreement and compliance with those rules. And so if that's the case, then yes, this registrant himself is in violation. And it's my suggestion that kind of in accordance with the consent order and the civil penalty fine of $1,000 that we administered and has been resolved with the firm itself, it's my opinion that it should also be applied to the registrant himself, which is what we're discussing here. I just want to know if there's any other thoughts from other board members on that. Tim, Jackie, Kevin, any thoughts?
Jay, this is Tim. In my review, I think I would have to concur with the direction that you're going, because I think we send a bad message if the respondent is not penalized in some manner, because this same situation could happen again. It could happen again with the same respondent. They could go to company B, for example, and do the same thing. Even though they had admitted knowledge of it, they could still do it again. And I think that would set a bad precedent for our board if we didn't have some type of penalty.
Yeah, you bring up a good point there, Tim. You know, the precedent that's being set here is important for the future, and I agree with what you're saying there. If we go a little soft on this, or don't do anything for that matter, that what does that say to all of us fellow other surveyors in the state? I think you bring up a good point there, Jackie. What are your thoughts on that?
I think what you said, you said well, and I'm in agreement with you guys. You know, the respondent has responsibility, regardless of what the firm does or how they react. So I'm in agreement with you guys.
Kevin?
I would agree with you guys. I'm curious to know, is it typical for like I'll call this a statute violation? Is it typical for the firm and the licensee to be punished, or is it? I get the licensee, and my thought is even before the firm, the licensee would have gotten the fine. But is it a violation on both parties?
I don't know that I can recall this happening in prior times. Maybe Erica could address that.
Yes, this has never happened since I've been working for this board, or any of the older legal reports I've reviewed. This is definitely a new thing in recent times.
All the more stands for setting the precedence here. If there's any other discussion on this, otherwise I'll entertain a motion.
I'll just say that I'm definitely for. I'm in agreement with you guys for sure.
Great, thank you, Kevin. All right, if there's no further discussion, we'll entertain a motion from one of the board members, please.
Yes, Mr. Kaufman, this is Tim. I think that in the spirit of our discussion and so forth, I think that I would recommend a civil penalty of $1,000 for this respondent.
All right, a civil penalty of $1,000. Would that include a consent order? Is that one and the same, Erica? Could you address that for me?
Yes, it would be authorizing the offer of that $1,000 civil penalty in the form of a consent order.
Great, thank you. All right, so we have the initial motion from Tim. Is there a second?
Jackie, I second.
Jackie with a second. Any further discussion to be made? All right, hearing none. Michael, would you call the roll, please?
Yes, sir. Mr. Kaufman,
Yes.
Mr. Dillahey,
Yes.
Mr. Lingerfeld,
Aye.
Mr. Martin.
Yes.
Thank you, gentlemen.
All right, with that, the motion passes. All right, Ms. Erica, next item, please.
Okay, that brings us to number 4, 20200544731. And this matter, to me, after reviewing everything, seems like a neighborly dispute. Complainant alleges that respondent, who is a licensed land surveyor, took some railroad ties that had washed up off of the complainant's property onto respondent's property after a flood. And then on top of that, kind of threw in another allegation that the complainant's next door neighbor had a property survey completed by respondent that they think that happened. So I've never been given a copy of any survey to review. I think those allegations just come with the anger of this railroad tie situation. And the respondent provided almost 500 pages of supporting documentation along with their response, and kind of explained what happened with the cleanup, and that complainant just wasn't available for quite some time to even talk to about this, and they were very hostile. And in counsel's opinion, there is no evidence of any violations as it relates to the survey that is supposedly at issue, and the allegations about complainant's alleged railroad ties are just unrelated to the practice of land surveying. So my recommendation is to dismiss.
Great, thanks, Erica. Is there any comments or questions from the members of the board? Yeah.
This is Tim. The only comment that I have is I do note that this particular respondent has a disciplinary history. Not to say that this should be included, but I'm just simply making that notation.
All right, so noted. Yeah, I don't know or see any way that applies directly to what we're discussing here, but it is noted, and you're absolutely correct on that, Tim. Any other comments or questions?
Mr. Chairman, it's Jackie. I don't have any comments or questions. I would like to make a motion that we accept the council's recommendation for dismissal.
All right, so moved with a recommendation from staff. Is there a second?
Second.
Thanks, Kevin. All right. So we have a motion from Jackie, a second from Kevin. Any other further comments or questions? All right, hearing none. Michael, would you call that roll, please?
Yes, sir. Mr. Kaufman,
Yes.
Mr. Dillahay,
Yes.
Mr. Lingerfeld,
Aye.
Mr. Martin.
Yes.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. All right, with that, the motion to dismiss is approved. All right, Miss Erica, item number 5, please.
Number 5, 2020-063-211. The complainant hired the respondent to complete some land survey work on an adjacent property to have that property divided and be folded into 2 other properties equally. Respondent was paid for the work, completed the drawing, returned it to the complainant for county signatures, and it seems there was a holdup in getting everything completed within the time frame that complainant wanted. But the respondent explained to the complainant after, during the process that the holdups were not anything they could do anything about. It was a planning commission issue, and they tried to keep the complainant notified of the issues that were continuing, and there were corrections that needed to be made because of a wastewater management amendment request. So by the time I'm presenting this, it seems everything has been resolved. I reached out to the complainant myself not too long ago and made sure of that. So the corrections have been made. They were delivered to Wastewater Authority as of August 22nd. The respondent gave me copies of plats and related documents. So my recommendation is to dismiss.
Great, thank you, Miss Erica. Yeah, just my thoughts real quick. I agree. Having delays like that through some of the municipal agencies is legitimate. The best part to hear is that it sounds like it has been resolved. The fact that you reached out recently to the complainant certainly helps a bit. Yeah, I would tend to agree with your recommendation. Any thoughts from the other members of the board? Hearing none, is there a motion to be made?
Make a motion that we dismiss.
All right, motion from Tim for dismissal. Is there a second?
Second.
Jackie, great, thank you. Any further discussion? All right, hearing none. Michael, would you call the roll on that, please?
Yes, sir. Mr. Kaufman.
Yes.
Is that a yes?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Dillahay,
Yes.
Mr. Lingerfeld,
Aye.
Mr. Martin.
Yes.
Thank you.
With that, the motion passes for dismissal. All right, Miss Erica, item number 6, please.
Number 6 is 2020-060-881. The complainant alleges that respondent's agents came onto their personal property and dug a hole in their grass looking for a boundary marker. About 10 days after the complaint was filed, the complainant reached out to us and let us know that there was no longer any issues. They wanted to withdraw their complaint, and respondent even went so far as to offer $250 to the complainant for anything that needed to be done going forward. They thought they would need to come remove the sod plug, but that never even happened, and they still paid the complainant the money just for them being, I guess, upset about this. I don't see any evidence of any violation, so my recommendation is dismissal.
Great, thank you, Miss Erica. Yeah, I've had similar situations with clearing line and bushes and digging holes, and so I can kind of feel where this guy's coming from. But I'm glad to hear that it did. Looks like it got resolved within 10 days. I do appreciate that the complainant did contact you and let you know that. So it looks like it worked out well. Any other comments from members of the board? All right.
Move we dismiss.
Who was that?
Jackie.
Jackie, thank you. Motion to dismiss from Jackie. Is there a second?
I second the motion. Kevin Martin.
All right, Kevin, with the second there. Thank you. Is there any further discussion? All right, hearing none. Michael, would you call the roll, please?
Yes, Mr. Kaufman,
Yes.
Mr. Dillahay,
Yes.
Mr. Lingerfeld,
Aye.
Mr. Martin.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, with that, the motion has been approved. Ms. Erica, can we move on to item 7, please?
Yes, number 7 is represent this matter was presented to the board at the last meeting. The number is 20200-36851. It was a matter that was opened as a result of the continuing education hours audit that we did. And when I was preparing to draft the consent order, I found some issues in the file, just the details of the documents between the licensee and our staff. And after discussion with the board staff and the program staff, it was discovered there was an administrative error that led to this complaint being opened. The respondent did have the amount of hours they needed. There was no violation, so my recommendation is to dismiss.
Okay, very good. It sounds like just an unfortunate oversight here, administrative error. Miss Erica, just real quick question. I definitely want to, in a situation like this, and has the respondent obviously been notified and made very clear that what happened here and the situation?
Well, I haven't given the respondent any sort of closure, just to let them know that it's pending until it's presented to the commission. So as soon as there is a decision, I would absolutely reach out to the respondent.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. Okay, any comments or questions from members of the board? All right, hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion that we dismiss, and hopefully Ms. Erica will craft a very nice letter.
I will.
Absolutely, well put, Tim. Is there a second, please?
Yeah, Jackie, second.
Thank you, Jackie. All right, with that, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All right, hearing none. Michael, would you call the roll, please?
Yes, sir. Mr. Kaufman,
Yes.
Mr. Dillahay,
Yes.
Mr. Lingerfeld,
Aye.
Mr. Martin.
Yes.
All
Thank
right,
you.
with that, motion passes, and Miss Erica, if you would reach out, obviously, with a letter to the respondent there and just let them know the situation. Thank you. I'm sure he will be relieved. Okay, Miss Erica, we'll move on to item 8, please.
Thank you. Number 82020036821. And this matter was also presented to the board last month, or I'm sorry, the last board meeting, last quarter, as a result of the continuing education audit. Now, there was no sort of mistake on the administrative staff or our part, but the respondent watched that meeting and listened to the discussion about their complaint and reached out to me immediately and really felt they were unfairly lumped in with the other licensees who had actually been dishonest on their renewal paperwork. The licensees that didn't have enough hours clearly didn't have any sort of misunderstanding, and asked vehemently that I represent this matter with more detail. And I agreed after looking at their argument, and that's laid out in detail in the legal report. But basically, the respondent had enough hours, more than enough hours, had what they thought was standard, the 2 hours of standards for ethics, which is what they thought based on a newsletter that was sent out back in 2015. That newsletter stated that you can have 2 hours from a course or activity related to ethics and or standards. So they picked a course that they thought met this requirement because it had 2 hours of ethics or standards. So I thought that should put them in a different category than licensees who are just straight up dishonest on their applications. I felt like this was a pretty valid confusion. I can see how somebody would be confused. So I recommend voiding that consent order and issuing a letter of warning instead.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Just quick question, Erica, real quick. So in the hours that the respondent has, did they have 2 or more hours in ethics only without any hours in the minimum standards? Is that what I'm understanding?
Yes.
Okay, all right. And so and because of a newsletter from years ago, which had the and or, which was strictly just a newsletter, it wasn't directly from the rules. That was the point of confusion. Is that my understanding?
Yes, and the newsletter was sent to this licensee by a previous executive director of this board from our office.
Sure.
To explain the change.
Okay. Was the newsletter itself available to all registrants by some means, whether by website or something like that? Is that a general distributed document, that newsletter?
Honestly, I can't speak to that because I was not working on the board at that time. Maybe Caleb or somebody else might be able to answer that.
Caleb?
As far as I know, we haven't had newsletters since 2014, so that's also before I was here.
It has been a while. I think there are newsletters available on the website, even past newsletters, et cetera. Even if we're not doing them anymore, I believe they're there. At least the last time I looked, I do recall seeing newsletters available, but that's beside discussion, really. Any thoughts here from other members of the board?
Jay, this is Tim. If I may, just a few comments.
Yes, sir.
Number one, it's my experience that publications, writings, things by others do not supersede what the statute or the rule says. In my opinion, Ms. Erica can certainly correct me. 0820-05-.03, paragraph 1 states, and I'll read just simply for the record, it says a minimum of 2 PDHs shall be earned by successfully completing a course or activity that has content areas focused on surveying ethics and standards of practice. And I specifically note it says and, it does not say or. So my point here is that is the rule. Whatever a publication said or didn't say, is probably was not correct. I am remorseful that a former director reached out and sent this to this respondent. However, the respondent apparently had no issue in 2017 renewal and had no problem with it, yet now he has an issue with it in 2019 renewal. So, these are points that I just feel like need to be pointed out. I understand where he's coming from. But as Jay has eloquently said, which I can't talk as nice as Jay can, so many times, the licensee is responsible for understanding and going by the statutes and the rules. So, I'm not as forgiving as others most often, because I try to follow the rules and I hope that everybody else does. And also, as Jay said, I feel like that this individual had 2 hours, and I think Ms. Erica verified that. So, as far as whether they turned all those hours in at the appropriate time, that's something else. But in the previous review of this case, it said respondent did not complete the required hours until March 2020, which was beyond what we called the forgiveness period for the renewal for the end of 2019. So, that's where I'm coming at. So my question to Miss Erica is this: is that correct that these 2 hours, in whatever form they're in, were not completed until March 2020?
The 2 hours of ethics were completed before the end of 2019. When they signed their renewal paperwork, it was done. When we reached out to them and told them it was not sufficient because they needed an hour of ethics and an hour of standards, they then did additional, and that is when they actually fulfilled, the requirements as the rule states, not according to their confusion. So they just they did more.
Okay. And that's just what I wanted to clarify, but just as you pointed out in the discussion, Miss Erica, we have a lot of people that listen to this, used to watch it, now they listen. And that's great. I am all in favor of that because I want our licensees to be as informed as possible. And we often get questions even after the fact from licensee about, y'all discussed this and, what were you talking about? I didn't exactly understand it or couldn't hear all of it. So I think that's absolutely wonderful. And that's why I bring this point up to make sure, because it's important that the other licensees kind of hear, the nuts and bolts behind some of this stuff.
Yeah, you bring up some good points. Just for the record, I don't think that there was any underhandedness going on here. I don't think that the registrant was trying to dodge any hours that were required. I see that he or she had submitted 35, obviously above and beyond. It sounds like they took those the 2 hours of ethics prior to the expiration. Everything to me tells me that this registrant was straight up, believed that they were in compliance, had the hours, and was complying with everything. I think it really was just a genuine misunderstanding based on the newsletter that was sent. So I want to give the registrant all the credit there, that I don't think there was anything underhanded. However, Tim, you bring up an excellent point. The rules are what we as registrants follow. It is the rules, and the rules are clear. I don't know of any other registrant since these rules have been in effect that has had this same issue or has either misunderstood them to be different for any reason. The rules are the rules. It's unfortunate in this particular situation. Again, I don't think there's anything dishonest here. I really don't. I really think that they do believe they were in compliance based on the information they had at hand. However, again, my point is the rules are what we follow, not a newsletter that may state differently. And if there was confusion, had the registrant referenced both the rules and the newsletter and saw that there was a difference between them, certainly they should have reached out to the board and gotten a clarification on that. So with that in mind, while I don't think this, again, I want to give all credit to the registrant. I really don't think this is of a violation that would relate to a civil penalty or any disciplinary action. I really don't. But I do think that notice needs to be put out not only to this registrant, but also to all registrants, that we're clear that the rules are what we follow here. And with that in mind, myself personally, I agree with the recommendation of staff for a letter of warning, which Erica, correct me if I'm wrong here, is not a disciplinary action, rather just a letter that goes in their file. Is that correct?
Correct.
All right. With that being said, any other thoughts from the other members? All right. Hearing none, I'll certainly entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to accept staff's recommendation of letter of warning.
All right, motion made from Tim to accept the recommendation from staff of a letter of warning. Is there a second on that?
A second, Kevin.
All right, I think that was from Kevin there. Thank you, Kevin. So we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion to be made? All right, hearing none. Michael, would you call the roll on that, please?
Yes, sir. Mr. Kaufman,
Yes.
Mr. Dillahay,
Yes.
Mr. Lingerfeld,
Aye.
Mr. Martin.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, with that, the motion is approved. I believe that was the last item, Miss Erica. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Outstanding job that you've done today, and obviously in the time and effort you spent in preparing the legal report. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
All right, with that, moving on, I see on the next on the agenda is the director's report. Michael, I think that would be you.
That is me. This is my first solo flight with you fellas, so I don't eat my lunch all at once, okay? The first item I have is just a follow-up on the NCEES reports that were Roxana went through at the last meeting in July. Like I said, this is follow-up where Southern Zone officers were elected, and I wanted to make sure that no other business needed to be conducted or completed regarding anything with votes relating to NCWS.
Michael, this is Tim. I think we're good on that.
Okay. All right. Thank you. The next item on that I have for you are budget reports. I believe you all received a year-end, an FY20 year-end budget report, which at the top you'll see has July 2019 at fiscal year begins. I'd like to start there. I know that this was discussed in the last meeting, although we did not have the report in yet. So I wanted to go over it with you real quick and point out to you that the top right section, or the top right corner at the base of the first section, you see the number 309,275,000. That is the total gross for this this program over the course of last year. And following that column down to 134,516, that's the total expenses for the year, with a net of $174,759, taking the reserve to $398,14 for the year. Are there any questions related to this FY20 budget report?
No questions offhand. I just note that the by far the majority of the income is from, as would be expected, from the licensing on our biannual schedule there.
Yes, sir. That's my interpretation as well.
So essentially, that income has got to hold us out for 2 years. Is that what I understand?
Yes. And let's see. On the next, that is true. And on the next one, the July 20. I'll show you what average yearly expenditures look like. So if you wouldn't mind switching over to the next one, we'll continue this conversation, but by looking at the current fiscal year, which began in July. But to continue your conversation, sir, if you look down at the very bottom of the page, you see expenditures for the FY 2019, 18, and 17, the last 3 trailing years. And if you follow that all the way to the right, you'll see an average. Or we could average that out. You see 124,000, 140,000, 141,000. So it would be safe to say that we would land somewhere in between $124,000 and $140,000 in expenditures. And if you follow that up just to the one standalone reserve balance line, you see $189,471, which under current status gives us enough money to fall well above that average for the next year.
Certainly sounds promising. Could I ask a question on one of the line items?
Sure.
And this is just out of my sheer ignorance. The Edison expense totals for July and August of 2020 compared to the same numbers for 2019, about $1,000 more per month. Not being very familiar with what Edison expenditure totals are or why they would increase, can you just very, very briefly explain that for me?
Yes, sir. It appears to me that the biggest section of that would be in salary and benefits for staff. I'm not sure what the staff landscape looked like in July and August of 2019. I do know that there has been some turnover and hirings and executive directors switching out and things of the sort. So I would imagine that based on what I can see here, that is it's just hiring and changing out of staff.
I got you. I see it now. Okay, thank you.
Michael, this is Tim. I have a question, just again, like Jay, out of ignorance. On the fiscal year end 2019, on June, the month of June, it shows a reserve balance of $398,014.
Yes, sir.
And then when you get to July on the fiscal year ending 2020, that reserve balance goes to $201,350. What is that difference?
Tim, that's a good question, and I will have to get back to you on that. I apologize. I don't have the answer for you right off the top of my head, but when it comes to something like this, I want to make sure I get it right. If you would give me a day or so to get back to you.
Certainly. I know if I didn't know it and then you didn't know it, we got to wait a while.
Well, hopefully it won't.
Michael?
Yes.
I'm sorry. Can you hear me? This is Maria. If I recall, I think I went with Roxana when the land surveyor report was sunsetted. It had something to do with the year, do all the land surveyors renew on the same year?
Yes.
Or is it? So
It's a biannual. I'm sorry, it's a biannual renewal.
So 1 year, I think the budget operates in the black, and then on non-renewal years, it operates in the red. So I think what you're seeing there is the discrepancy between those 2 years, and we have fees for renewal and then not.
Well, you are correct in that, Maria, and I could point that out if you all follow to the July 2020 fiscal year, which is just July and August. You'll see at the far right at the bottom, under total expenditures, we're operating at a deficit right now of $24,000. I realize that doesn't make up for the 398.14 to 201, but that is true. We will operate in a deficit this year.
I think I figured it out, Michael. I think what they did, and thank you, Maria, was I think that they have taken, if you look at the bottom of the page on the historical trend, I think they took the 2018 revenue and subtracted the 2018 expenses, which is about $172,000. And if you take that away from 398, you get up pretty close to the 201. So that's maybe what they've done, but I'll certainly yield to you finding out the answer, Mike.
Yeah, that'd be great. I'll double check that for you and let you know.
Thank you very much.
It sounds like your math is pretty good.
Michael, when you get an answer on that, would you copy all the board members, please?
Absolutely.
Great, thank you. All right, any other questions for Michael on the budget report? Great, good job, Michael. Appreciate that. I'll let you continue on with the next item there.
Thank you, sir. PSI exam statistics. I can't say that there's a big change from now to the last ones that you all heard. We have a total of 25 candidates. This is for the entire year to date through, well, through October 15th, excuse me. 25 total candidates, 16 passing, 8 failing, and 1 absent. And then I'd like to also add on to, and this could come up later when we talk about renewals, but currently that's 1,077 licensees. So 25 candidates and 1,077 licensees.
Excellent.
And actually, if you don't mind, Mr. Chairman, I'll just go ahead and follow that up with the renewal and just switch it with discuss certificates, since they kind of work into each other.
Yeah, absolutely. Go right ahead.
Okay. And so for the renewal update, just wanted to let you all know that we have 52 people who have still yet to renew. They have received multiple notice. We have sent reminders, let's see, February 21st, or I'm sorry, starting with October 28th, 2019. That was the initial reminder. February 21st, 2020, and September 30th, 2020. So there have been 3 reminders that have gone out, and that's what we're sitting at right now, is 15 who have not renewed, or I'm sorry, 52.
52. Wow. Okay. Are we getting any response from them as to why they're not renewing?
I can't speak to that. I would actually defer to Caleb Darnell, who is our admin manager for the board. Caleb, have you seen any response in that regard?
Sorry, I had to unmute. Very little responses from this last sending out, and it was mostly, I believe, about 45 emails, and then we mailed out about 7 to 9 letters. So very little response from this latest batch.
Okay.
We do know, Jay, we do know that those emails are going through. They're at least going to and being accepted by the address that we have on file.
Right. Do we know if any of those are choosing to go into a retired status or anything like that, or is it just we're just not hearing a response either way?
At this point, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Caleb.
We have very little response either way. I mean, if we knew they wanted to go into retirement status, we would of course push them down that path. But just not even any responses on this batch. Okay.
So I think and Tim, Jackie, Kevin, correct me if I'm wrong here. I think at the end of the year itself, December 31st, the so-called grace period expires. And then after that, come first of the year, their license is officially expired. Is that correct? Is that y'all's understanding as well?
Yes, you're correct, Jay. And I was going to point out the same thing from the standpoint that the board, by our rules, are supposed to notify the Register of Deeds in the home county for that individual that goes beyond that 12-month period.
That's good to know. I would trust that upon the first of the year, when their licenses officially expire, pending that we haven't heard different, that they would receive official correspondence from the board administratively that their license is expired. I certainly wouldn't want them just to quote unquote know that. Is that something that will be done or can be done?
It's my understanding that has been practice of the board to alert people or notify people upon the expiration of their license.
I would certainly trust that would be done. Okay, well, no, they've still got a little bit of time, I guess, for those 52 individuals, but I would probably start typing up a template letter notifying them that their licenses are officially expired. Okay, anything further on that? Tim, was that you?
Jay, this is Jackie. Follow up with what Tim said too about notifying the Register of Deeds.
Yes.
I would take it that our staff there would be charged with that.
Well, it is in the rules. I would certainly trust that they would do that.
Okay.
All right, Michael, anything further on that?
No, sir. That is all we have for that.
You want to discuss the certificates, kind of lump that all in together? Is that what you said?
Well, yeah, I wanted to just switch the order there because the update on the renewal seemed to go right in with the statistics, at least with the little factoids that I was giving. But yes, discussion of certificates. There is an opportunity for us to save some time and a little bit of money and I think this has been discussed before, and this is following some recommendation for agenda items, but would like to discuss the implementation of digital signatures on the certificates that we send out. That would kind of cut down our time in terms of how long it takes us to finish the process from the print office to getting the certificates to each of you, to getting the certificates then sent back and then sending them back out. I mean, you're looking at roughly about an extra month of time there. So I would put it forward that it would make things a little bit more streamlined if we were able to have you all send us a picture of your signature so that we could just place them on at the printing office, place them in the appropriate spot, and be able to mail those signatures out from here as opposed to sending them individually.
Yeah, and we did discuss this at our last meeting, and it is really a matter of cost savings and a matter of time efficiency. In the past, I've certainly received phone calls from newly licensed registrants, basically asking, hey, where's my certificate? I paid, I don't know, I think it's $100 for it. I want to get it. It's one of those things that you frame and you put on the wall proudly. And personally, I have to say that that's probably one of the most satisfying moments of serving on this board is the actual signing of those certificates. It brings me pride and pleasure both to acknowledge their accomplishments, which is significant. And I think I speak for the other members as well. But because of the current situation, obviously we're not able to meet in person to sign these. I think we did one go around with a FedEx package to me and up to Tim and over to the other members for their signatures, and there was a little bit of an issue in there as far as not on anybody's fault here, but as far as FedEx's issue with handling of the package, some of those certificates got kind of roughed up a little bit, et cetera, et cetera. And I think your suggestion here, the digital signatures would satisfy all those issues. And so I personally, although I regret it in that I don't get the personal satisfaction of signing them myself, I do think this is probably, at least in the meantime, while we're still meeting remotely, probably a good, satisfactory, meet in the middle type solution to the issue here. Does anybody else have comments or thoughts on that? Okay, not hearing any. I assume that's in the positive. As far as getting those signatures to you and getting this underway, what do you need from us, Michael?
I'll have Caleb reach out to you and describe you the most appropriate way. I mean, we can take these. You could send us a picture, you could send us a scan, but what we'll need you all to do is, write your signature large enough on a piece of paper so that we can shrink it down with enough resolution and place these on the certificates. So I will have Caleb reach out to each of you this afternoon to explain to you the process and tell you the best way to get your signature to us.
Excellent. And not to drag this issue on much longer, because I think we're all in agreement here. Can I have, I think, probably implied assurance that there is a level of security on these signatures here, that it's not going to go outside the walls of your building there and for the intended purpose only, obviously?
Absolutely. We won't place your signature on anything that you do not authorize. And I think in this regard, you're only authorizing us to use these on these certificates, and that's all they'll be used for.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure there was a level of security that nobody has access to them, and they're not going to be out there for public purview type thing.
No. We'll keep them in your files here with us.
Excellent, thank you. Any discussion there or issues, Tim, Jackie, Kevin? Okay, hearing none. I think, are we comfortable with that? I don't think there's anything we need to go further with that. I guess we'll hear from Caleb here with instructions.
Yes, sir.
Okay, good and deal.
All right. Thank you very much. I really appreciate that. Let's see. Next is the new policy for course approval question. Course approval. Here's a new development related to course approval. I know you all are accustomed to having a list of courses in front of you. Unfortunately, we did not receive that list until yesterday at late afternoon. We did not feel that it was enough time appropriately to give you with this list and for review. So we'll include that list of 36 for the next meeting. One addendum to that is we would like to ask for the board permission when it comes to course renewals that we be able to approve those course renewals since they have previously been accepted, meaning the renewal applicant has stated no changes to the previously approved curriculum. And that would save us some time in the process in also streamlining this, and it would keep us from having to go from the education approval to the board approval, seeing as how they've already been approved if they indicate that there are no changes to the curriculum.
Michael, if I may interrupt just a moment, this is Tim.
Yes, sir.
Two things. Number one, with respect to the renewals, I think it's very important that, and I have no problem with the staff doing that, doing the approval, but I think it's very important that the provider of the seminar or the PDHs understand that when those courses are renewed, that the licensee can only take that course no more often than like once every 4 years, because we have that in our continuing education rule. So, you know, just as sort of an FYI, just because they renew course A and they've had it for 2 years and we renew it for 2 more years, doesn't mean that the licensee is necessarily able to take that course. And I just wanted to make that point.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
The second point I wanted to make was I'm a little concerned when I heard you say that you had a list of 36 courses that the board needed to look at, then we'd wait till the next meeting. Well, the next meeting is not until the end of February. And typically speaking, we see a great surge, particularly among the older surveyors, of trying to get what they feel like they need to have half of what we require at the end of each calendar year. So we see a pretty good influx of seminars November, December. And I just wonder in those 36, if some of those seminars are not there, and if we're holding up any of their approvals, then they're not going to be able to teach them.
Yeah, Tim, both your points I'm agreeing with. I think if we can agree administratively and with the other members of the board, perhaps with those 36 credit hours that are quote, you know, waiting on our review and approval, I don't see any reason why those couldn't be just, you know, after this meeting today, sent to us by email for our individual review, and then approval of the ones that we agree with. And if there's any that are, you know, objectionable, that those be, you know, pulled out. But in the interest of time and working with these, Tim is absolutely right. Toward the end of the year, it gets busy for them. I don't want to hold them back on being one of those opportunities for the next quarterly meeting. I don't see any reason why those couldn't be sent to us by email, similar to the way the applications are for our reviews. That we could handle those on our own and you know, review and approve and decide on those and send them right back.
That's a great idea, Jay, and we can do that. We can do that. We just didn't think there was enough time today from the time they came in yesterday until today's meeting to get them to you for an appropriate amount of time for review.
Yep, you're absolutely right. But I think with emails after today's meeting, sometime either this week, next week, let's get those underway. I don't want to hold those PDHs back.
Okay, great. We will do that. But yes, as for the question on the policy of course renewal approval, how do you all think?
Yeah, I think that's a great idea for any of those that are renewals and renewal only, where the course content stays exactly the same. There is no reason to hold those back either. Let's get those approved administratively. The only thing I would ask is that, you know, with administrative approval on those, that those still be brought to our attention at the very least at the next meeting. Just say, hey, FYI, you know, courses XYZ, which are renewals, were approved administratively, just for the board's information and the public's information as well.
Absolutely. We will definitely keep those on the board, the quarterly board reports.
Okay. All right. Jackie or Kevin, any thoughts on that administrative approval for renewals?
I'm good with you, Jay.
Okay. All right. Hearing no objections to that. Michael, do you need anything from us in terms of a board for getting that in?
No, I don't believe that requires a vote. But we can, we'll start doing that process, and you all should, you'll see some of these on the next quarterly report. But thank you very much. I think this is going to speed up our process and actually help the not only the consumer but also the course provider.
Absolutely, yeah. We need to, anything we can do to improve the efficiency on both sides, I think is a good move.
Well, thank you. I only have one other item here on my agenda, and that was a follow-up again on expert reviewers. This is just a follow-up from last meeting. Something that Mr. Lingerfeld had suggested, maybe a restructure on how to get responses from experts for the complaints. However, since we don't hear, me and Caleb, Morgan, we don't actually deal with the complaints. I just wanted to make sure that everything was good in that process between Erica, between you and legal and the board. This may not need or require a lot of discussion. I could just be interpreting things wrong or in a different way from last meeting's minutes.
Well, I think the point of concern here is that the expert reviewers are providing in a timely manner and in content what Miss Erica is requiring of them, and I guess only Miss Erica really could respond to that.
And can you repeat the question, please?
Sure, Erica, sure. This is just a follow-up. I mean, at the last meeting, Mr. Lingerfeld had suggested maybe a restructure on how we get the response from the experts for the complaints. And this is really just a question. The question is, does the system work, or do we need to look at restructuring it? Are you pleased with the way things function right now?
I'm pleased with how they function right now. I can't think of any criticism. I will say that over time, I've learned that it could be more helpful to the expert that I ask more specific, maybe give them some specific direction on top of what they normally do if I need that. Just kind of a way for us to communicate what I need and what they need. I've learned, I haven't had that come up yet with this board, but that's just what I'm saying. I've learned that from other boards. So I would like to do that unless anybody has any sort of opposition to it. Now that I've learned more about it, I could give, instead of just asking for an expert review, give them some direction on top of that general expert review, if it applies.
Yeah, I don't see there's any issue with that. I think you can give the expert reviewers the direction and the requirements and expectations. I think all the better.
I definitely think that the experts are doing a great job. It's such a technical review for somebody like me who's not in the industry or in the practice. So it does take a lot of, I think, time working with this program to learn about it, for me to even know what I should be asking for. And I feel like I'm finally at that point where I feel more comfortable. And but I do have, nothing but praise for the experts. And we did communicate to them a comment that was made at the last board meeting to not make a recommendation on anything. So that was already cured. Good. And I saw that on their work product this time.
Well, that's good to hear. And I'm glad to hear that you're pleased with their responses. And I trust that they're coming back in a timely manner and satisfying what it is that you need so far. So based on the legal reviews that we've had from you, it looks like they are. So that's good to hear.
Miss Erica, this is Tim. I think the spirit, I think you've wrapped your arms around the spirit of my previous question and discussion, because I can clearly see that you pick up on the kind of questions that we ask that maybe were not answered by the expert. And I think that you are helping us by asking them some of those questions, so that as we discuss these legal cases, that we're not asking near as many questions of you via the expert that we had been in the past. So from my standpoint, I'm exceptionally pleased with your work and your adjustments with the experts and how you present things.
Thank you so much, Tim.
Absolutely.
That is really wonderful to hear, because I learned so much from every meeting that I try to take that with me and use it. So we don't, maybe you won't have to ask so many questions, but I always welcome them and they teach me so much. So I'm really pleased to hear that.
Yeah, great point, Tim, and I concur with that 100%. Way to go. Okay, Michael, that's the end of what's on the agenda under the director's report. Was there anything additional you wanted to add to that?
No, sir. I have exhausted my portion of the agenda.
Well, for the first solo run through it, I think you did pretty good job there. Gold star for you.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, moving on, new business, 2 items here. Minimum technical standards discussion. Tim, I think you may have placed that on the agenda for today. Was there somewhere you wanted to go with that?
I'm guilty of that, Mr. Kaufman. I think that I know from our last board presentation at TAPS at their annual meeting, I know there was some questions about a few of the minimum technical standards. There were also some comments about some misspellings and a few things of that nature that are in the minimum technical standards. And I felt like that it's been a while since we have really began looking at those. And just like with anything, there's always something based on where we're at in time and so forth, the societal demands, professional demands, that we can probably tweak a little bit. So I just wanted to bring it back before the board to see if both board and staff and legal were interested in us beginning a review, because, in the past, that's been one of our charges, has been to review different chapters and sections of our statutes and rules and to try to keep everything up to speed. So that was the reason that I brought it up.
Okay, thanks, Tim. One of the interesting things about our rules is that it seems to be a living, ongoing, evolving document. That as the profession itself changes almost on a day-to-day basis, the rules that are in print seem to need or should evolve with it. I've had many discussions on the telephone with local surveyors in West Tennessee about certain rules that just don't apply anymore, just because that's the way it was, but that's not the way it is anymore. And it's always good to go back and review what we've had that are in place right now and how can we improve on it. Is there anything in there that needs to not only be changed or added, but even more so, perhaps even removed? And so I agree that I do think it's probably time that we start the process, because if you've been involved in a rules changing before, it's a lengthy, drawn out process that even sometimes by the time it gets approved, maybe doesn't even apply anymore. So I think you bring up a good point, Tim. I'm glad you put that on the agenda today. I think I am going to ask members of the board, to include myself here, to perhaps at the next, or not even perhaps, but to do this at the next meeting, to address some items perhaps that need to be looked at, whether it needs to be added, revised, or removed, either way across the board, and bring that to the next meeting. I'll make sure it's on the agenda, and perhaps we can get that ball rolling, especially if you can reach out to members of your area, other surveyors, and ask, even perhaps approach TAPS if there's any specific items in the technical standards that need to be addressed, that we can bring that to our attention and perhaps get that ball rolling. Any other thoughts there, Tim, Jackie, Kevin? Okay, I think we've addressed that one.
Hey, Jay, one quick. Would it be appropriate if we reached out to the state association to ask or request that they maybe form a committee to work with us or offer suggestions as we move forward, so we get a good input from the overall surveying population?
Absolutely, and I will do that myself. I'll reach out to Ashley Rose, the acting president, and address that as well. I think it is very important, as I consider TAPS to be our sister brother relationship here, that they are involved and that we reach out to them and for active input from them, and that they be certainly as involved as we will be, as of course we always invite them to our meetings, and certainly want to address their needs as well. So that's an excellent suggestion, Jackie, and I will take that personally and run with that and get back with you on that.
This is Maria. I just want to make one point. I'll be involved in the rulemaking process with you all. So certainly it's okay to reach out to your associations and gather feedback on what the licensees are saying. But as I'm sure you all know, have been going through the rule process before, once the board decides on that, we won't work in partnership with the association. So I just want to make that clear. It's just as far as forming any committees or that type of thing, we won't really be able to utilize that past once the board votes on the rule changes. Then from then on, it's just lots of internal governor's office, attorney general's office, and the legislator. So I'm happy to answer any questions on the rulemaking process and how I can be of assistance to you all. I just did want to point that out.
Good, thank you, Maria. And you make a good point. I didn't mean to imply otherwise there, but just rather that I would like their involvement on the front end as to the suggested changes.
Absolutely.
Of which we could work with. So excellent, great.
Absolutely,
thank you.
Because they're talking to the licensees, I'm sure, on a daily basis, and so they have insight that may be helpful of how we can better serve the public and be efficient in our licensing. So that is helpful.
Yes, great. Thank you so much. Okay, any other input there from Tim, Jackie, Kevin, anything? Okay, I think we have an action plan there on that item. We'll move forward with that and expect to hear from you at the next meeting. With that being said, we'll move on to our next item here. And I put this one on the agenda, the Russell application. I received this application. I don't know what other members may have, but I did have a little bit of heartache on it for two reasons really, but I think I have a suggested path here, and I will be asking for action from the board on this. Mr. Russell is actually a local surveyor in West Tennessee. Actually, primarily does his business, and I believe he resides in northern Mississippi. Has been an active surveyor, well known for years, as long as I've been around. Certainly familiar with him. Back in basically just in review of his application back in 2014. Looking at his employment history, he primarily practiced in the engineering field. He is a licensed engineer as well. And based on his employment record, that was the last time that he listed that he was actively surveying in 2014. His at the time license in Tennessee for surveying expired in 2015, and that's his current status based on when I looked at it this morning on the website. His license is Tennessee surveying license is listed as expired. And if you look at his history, he has once before, prior to 2015, also had an expired Tennessee surveying license, which he did get renewed one time. So you can say that twice before, including the current period, his Tennessee surveying license has been expired. And now he's come before the board with a new application to renew his license for surveying. And I wanted to address the board on that. Because he's been previously licensed before, we certainly have to take that into consideration. And based on my understanding of the rules, and please correct me if I'm wrong, based on the rules itself, being that he currently has an expired license, that if he wants to get that license renewed in Tennessee, that the expectation is that he take or retake at the board's purview the Tennessee specific exam, the 2-hour, which is now online computerized exam. However, the board does have the option to waive that requirement and reissue a current license, which is what I would like to discuss today. I guess first off, I need to, before we get into discussion, ask if any of the other or which of the other board members here have had the opportunity to review Mr. Russell's application or are familiar with it at least.
Jay, this is Tim. I reviewed Mr. Russell's application as forwarded to me by Ms. Morgan,
Okay.
August 31st of this year. And his, basically, his application was in order. However, he submitted plats that were prior to 2014, which we had a standards update in 2014. So his plats were not current. They were not stamped or signed by a current licensee, seeing as his license expired in 15. And there were several things that were lacking in the plats, along with his legal descriptions. And I requested new plats and new legals. My notion at that time was if he did those things based on everything else I had seen, I would have probably been in favor of approving his application for him to retake the examination.
Yeah, Tim, like I said earlier, I also reviewed that application, and I too found the similar errors in the plats and descriptions that were submitted. But I was taking this a step further, that once those were corrected and re-reviewed and approved by the board in terms of the plats and descriptions, that the next hurdle would be the option or the board's discretion for re-examination on the Tennessee state specific exam. So I agree with what you said right there, but rather I was just kind of moving it forward that those would be corrected, resubmitted, and approved, and then we would address the examination point here.
Well, my concern on waiving the exam is precedent. I don't want to set a precedent that, you can let your license expire 2 or 3 times for whatever reason, out of necessity or out of personal desire or whatever that reason may be, and then just go back to the board and they just automatically give it back to you. Because, we have language in there where somebody is within a 2-year window so they can recover, by their continued education and so forth. And someone like that, we probably could renew. But in this case, this one has been out for well over 4 years. So it's my notion that the expectation from our board of performance on a new examination is not excessive.
Yeah, and I agree. And one of the reasons that I was in favor of keeping the requirement for Mr. Russell to take that 2-hour Tennessee specific exam is for 2 reasons. Number one, he hasn't been actively surveying anywhere based on his work experience since 2014. And then the prior surveying experience that he had before that for many, many years was all in Mississippi, again, based on the application there. So that kind of gave me an additional reason myself in my thoughts of, yes, this applicant should retake the Tennessee specific exam, and that the board, while we'll consider the waiving it, I would suggest to the board that we not consider that and that we follow the requirement that he take that specific exam. But I certainly bring that up to the board for their review and certainly hear their thoughts. Jackie, Kevin, do you have anything further?
Gentlemen, if I may, this is Michael. If I may just point out for a matter of housekeeping's sake, I would like to say that Mr. Russell is on the line today with us. Should you all have any questions you'd like to direct towards him.
Excellent, thank you. Well, I certainly would, if there's no comments or questions from other members of the board, I certainly would like to give that opportunity to Mr. Russell. If there's any clarifications that we need here, something that we missed.
Laura, could you unmute he's the phone number.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to y'all today.
Welcome, Mr. Russell. I'm glad you're here.
Yeah, as you said, I've been surveying. I mean, I haven't been surveying for the past 5 years, and so when I moved back, had the opportunity to move back to excuse me, to North Mississippi, started with a firm here who does not have surveying as one of their services, and that's why I have the desire to renew my license at this point. I was expecting to have to take the exam. I don't have a problem with it. Obviously, you know, if the board would waive that, I would certainly be happy with that. But I understand the regulations that I have to take the exam. Once before, when my license was expired, I had to retake that exam also. So whatever the board pleases, I'll be glad to do it.
Okay, very good, Mr. Russell. We're glad to have you here. I'm glad that you chimed in with the information there. Yeah, you know, just looking at the record and for the reasons that you said yourself, it's been, you know, a couple of years there since you've actively been surveying and just trying to get your Tennessee license back. It is reassuring that prior decisions from the board that you retook the examination as well. I think it's probably best. I'll certainly let the board make the decision, but I think it's probably best that we just get you in there, take that re-exam. You know, of course, it's all computer-based, local. You don't have to travel up to Nashville anymore. I think if we can get that accomplished, once we get the revised plats and descriptions from you, get all that application in there squared away. If we can get you with that new computerized 2-hour exam, we'll get you underway.
That's fantastic. You know, sorry I've been tardy with responding to those surveys. I've got them sitting here on my desk, but I'm kind of overloaded and understaffed in the engineering department, so it hasn't been at the top of my pile, so to speak. So I will expedite getting those back to you.
Okay. Well, we appreciate that. As soon as you can get those up to the board, we'll get them submitted for review with the board members, and then hopefully get you tested and underway. And welcome back to Tennessee.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Excellent. Any comments or questions there for Mr. Russell from other members of the board? All right. That being said, if there's no objection, I think we collectively agree that once his application gets approved, we can get him re-examined with the state specific and go from there.
I agree, Jay.
Okay.
I'm
Kevin?
good.
All right,
I'm
Kevin?
good.
I agree as well.
Okay, very good. I think it's unanimous there. Michael, do we need a motion or anything, or are we happy there?
No, sir. We'll just put them through the process and go about business as usual.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Russell, thank you so much. We appreciate your time there.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate the opportunity.
All right, looking
Have a good
forward
day.
to it pretty soon. Thank you.
Bye.
All right, Michael, with that, I believe I'm at the bottom of my agenda unless there's anything you need to add to it.
The hours for credit, you all like to give those, don't you?
We do. And Michael, before we get to that point, could I ask a question?
Absolutely, sir.
We have, you know, since we've contracted with PSI for our state-specific examination, we had a committee formed at one time, basically for exam questions, which was myself, a representative from PSI, and Ashley Nallen Rose. Now I get her name messed up, Jay. But Miss Ashley and Matt Linval, and we met and crafted questions and so forth for this. It's been a couple of years now, and one of the things that was involved that we have never seen was a psychometric analysis of the exam after they got a specific number of exams taken. And I wonder if it would be possible for you to reach out to them, you know, since we have them under contract and so forth, and see if they have actually done that analysis. And the reason I asked that question is simply because depending upon the results of that, may or may not dictate whether we have another exam committee meeting in order to write some new questions and maybe possibly even reformat the exam somewhat based on their recommendations.
Yes, sir. We can absolutely check with them and see if there's a new report to go over.
And I appreciate that. And in response to your first question, Mr. Chairman, I would like to request that we get 1.5 hour PDHs for our meeting today.
All right, a motion for 1.5 hours of PDH. Is there a second on that?
I second.
All right, thank you. I think that was Kevin there. All right, Kevin with the second. Any other further discussion? If not, Michael, if you call the roll real quick, we'll get this underway.
Yes, sir. Mr. Kaufman,
Yes.
Mr. Dillahay,
Yes.
Mr. Lingerfeld,
Aye.
Mr. Martin.
Yes.
Thank you, sir.
All right, 1.5 PDHs for today's meeting. Gentlemen and ladies, staff especially, thank you for your hard work behind the scenes and certainly in preparation for today's meeting. Outstanding report from everybody. Michael, I think you did a great job, and Miss Erica with the legal report did a great job there as well. Sure appreciate all your efforts and hard work that goes towards putting this on.
Great. Thank you very much.
All right, if there's no other further comments or questions or concerns, we'll call this meeting adjourned.
All right, sir. This meeting will stand adjourned. Thank you very much to everybody today, and we'll get back in touch with each of you regarding the signatures and other follow-up items.
Please do. Thank you again, Michael.
All right. Have a great day.
All right, we'll see you.
Thank you, Michael. Great job.
Thank you, sir.